And we're back again for the 10th time. I think Dutch is up on his number 4, right?
Alright, so number 4 and number 5 could have been swapped either way. But Skyrim. Skyrim is my number 4. And the reason why Skyrim is my number 4 is because it probably came at a perfect time to where... Because the thing with Skyrim is, it's an RPG. It's extremely streamlined, though. You go through it, and everything's laid out. Like, it's an RPG, but it's like a walkthrough of an RPG. Like, you really just kind of get your hand held throughout the entirety of it. As opposed to, like, I think a lot of people would probably prefer Daggerfall or, say, Oblivion over Skyrim. But being that I fell out of video games for a long time, and then even when I got back into them, I rejected Skyrim. Then I started playing it and was hooked. There's a lot to be said, because the thing is I think the reason why Skyrim is so damn good, and the reason why so many people think it's so damn good that aren't like video game fucking elitists that they have to say boo to whatever everyone else likes, is because of this. You can't please all the people all the time. And that being said, if you can balance enough of the elements to please a bunch of people, you're going to sell a ton of fucking copies for all kinds of reasons.
Or be Captain America.
Yeah, and I think Skyrim does that because it streamlines itself. Because a lot of people that don't really give a shit about RPGs can play it. And a lot of people that don't give a shit about action-adventure games can play it. Yep. A lot of people that want to play puzzles can play it. I mean, the puzzles, to be honest, are kind of shitty. But, I mean, it doesn't... And the combat's fucking atrocious. But it's still, like, it's just... If you want to play, like, a one-man Dungeons & Dragons campaign... It's almost as close. It's probably as close as you can get. Ultimately, I think Daggerfall might have a bit better of like customization and stuff like that for characters.
I wonder how the Dungeons & Dragons games are. Because supposedly I never really played them too much, or at all, I should say.
Maybe I'll mention it later on in my list. But
no, we're all making each other's lists.
I know, right?
It's great.
But I mean, Skyrim. I don't really need to speak its praises simply because it's probably. I mean, I think it took Game Informer's #1 game of all fucking time out of a top 100. I know there's a ton of fanboys that would say Skyrim. I've got a ton of issues with Skyrim too, but the thing is, I've got a ton of issues with every fucking game. The fact of the matter is, like I hate the fact that you can go through and you play every faction, become king shit of the faction. What kind of person's really going to do that? Like, I bitched before about people not being special. In this case here, you're just way too fucking special. You go through, it's like, I'm the king assassin, I'm the king thief, I'm the king, I'm the king fucking everything. It doesn't matter. But you're not the fucking king. But somehow you're still the most important character in the world. It's kind of silly in that regard. But the thing is, if you put a little effort into your character and try not to go above and beyond reasoning with what goes on and take on too much, the story can make sense in such a coherent way that you're truly like unfolding a Dungeons & Dragons-esque open world status with you. And I mean, things don't necessarily change all that much, and some things can of course get repetitive, but I mean, it's fucking programming in a video game. How fucking open could it possibly be? It's just, with it being what it is.
But at least there are some differences. Like, you can go like the good side, the Empire route, and
absolutely
then
right,
the Rebels, whatever they're called,
right.
So I mean, at least there's some variety. It's not you always have to go A, B, C, D, or whatever.
It's true. You can choose paths on it. And I one specific playthrough that I'll mention on it is I wanted to play. I've always liked Paladin style characters, and one of my most successful runs in Skyrim. And I have invested so many fucking hours in Skyrim that I feel like I don't even have notes on the game, because I could probably fucking tell you everything in and out of the game, including the glitches that I exploit to become insanely powerful very fast. But, because of course Bethesda games aren't without their fucking glitches.
They are famous for such things.
Absolutely. Yes. And it's also funny. And I like a good comedic thing. Like when you're fucking running away from something where you're like, oh my god, I'm going to die. Holy shit, there's a horse hanging off that wall. And then you just keep running. Like, it doesn't matter that there's a fucking horse hanging through the wall. But I
can ride the horse to safety also.
Right. The thing, though, that I liked about it is, like, on this particular playthrough, I had roughly done 3 characters, let's say. One was a failure because I was just learning to play the game. The second one, I got overwhelmed. And the third one, I misplayed something. But I retired 2 characters at level 40. And then this next character, I got up to a roughly level 90 before I switched consoles, actually, because this game has lasted 2 consoles with me. And yeah, I still own it. And I still have an ongoing character. But the point is this paladin-style character that I was playing, I decided to play him very meticulously as a paladin, so I didn't get too brought up. So, like, when it came time to go to this town called Riften, I was going to avoid the Thieves Guild shit because I didn't want anything to do with the thievery. But the thing is, and I can't remember the specifics of it, but I ended up, by ignoring them, telling them to fuck off and all kinds of stuff like that, and everything going full circle, I eventually ended up meeting with them again. Their dialogue had changed. They gave me a better reason to go with them, and it was simply out of the fact that I had what I felt was a paladin-style righteous role to fill, and the only possible way to do it was through them, and they told me, look, it's all good, you can just do this shit, and I'm like, fuck, fine, okay, and it was good, and I didn't have to compromise my character, which is the main point. I didn't have to compromise him. And another thing I liked was, for instance, in the Assassins part, they're probably like the more evil of the factions. You got the Dark Brotherhood. I was kidnapped. It's something that happens that goes in, and like even to get to that point, I still felt was somewhat of a paladin thing. Someone who's played the game will know what I mean on it, because the person you have to kill ends up being a complete bitch. Worth it, like child abusing type person. So when you eventually wake up and you find that the person who's basically trying to recruit you is there, I was like, now I'm like, fuck, I can't play this game anymore. I can't play it as a paladin because now I have to do this goddamn Dark Brotherhood storyline. So not knowing any better, I walked over to the character thinking nothing would happen, and I bashed her with my shield. And she jumped off the fucking spot she was at, and I started squaring off with this fucking woman. Mm-hmm. And we're going back and forth. I kill her. I free the 3 fucking hostages that are there. And eventually I brought news of the Dark Brotherhood to like some guard, and I went and raided and took them out. I was like, holy shit, my paladin had just become this next level type shit, because I didn't think that was a fucking possibility, because I've done Dark Brotherhood playthroughs, didn't know I could just go up and whack her. And I did. And it was just, it was that cemented it. And really another thing that I thought was great was the fact that I spent about 45 minutes chasing down a fucking deer, and I didn't realize 45 minutes had gone by and all I had done was hunted a fucking deer, and I was like, that's a good game. When you can lose 45 minutes to bow hunting a fucking deer, it's just, I don't really need to speak on it all that much, because Skyrim will always be a top 100. Like, video game aficionados do it. The only people that don't are like naysayers that prefer fucking Daggerfall or Oblivion or some other random fucking thing. Because to be fair though, Skyrim is also like, it's so streamlined that it really is kind of the last of what it could be. Like that shit, the Elder Scrolls Online stuff to me is garbage. And I think whatever they come out with next, they've got to really knock it out of the fucking park, because Skyrim could eventually become the downfall of it. But Skyrim in and of itself is a really good fucking game. Or at least it's a good game, enough to keep you interested. But Skyrim is also, it's got its flaws. So, you know, not without going into too much detail, I suppose. It can go either way, and I can understand both arguments of it, but I had to put it on the list because it almost single-handedly brought me back into the world of video gaming, because it was so involved and detailed, and I respected the amount of work that went into it. The landscapes were great, even though the combat was silly. Everything that you're wearing and doing during the combat, all the different things with the Daedra, you know, the religious overtones, each city's got its own fucking spirit to it, and it's just, like I said, I played so many characters. Now I'm on like my 6th character probably, with different playthroughs, and while some of it does get repetitive, I mean, the opening sequence is just fucking god-awful. Luckily, when they developed the game further, you could skip the fucking intro and start from like a character creation standpoint. But I mean, that's repetitive, and some shit does get repetitive, some of the dungeon crawls and things like that. But I mean, I don't know. If you could tell me there was one that wasn't, then it's a fucking game in and of itself, and I bet you any money that because they focus so much on that aspect, something else sucks ass on that game. Right. So, that being said, Skyrim's my number 4. And I don't know, maybe it's kind of fanboyish, but I'm not a Bethesda
That's what
fanboy
these lists
at all.
are, though.
Yeah,
So
true.
Yes, it might be on top of some people's lists, like all time, like actual people that know the fuck video games are, but this is our list, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed or disagree?
I'll put it like this: Skyrim is great because at the time I had two kids. I had 2 kids, and they were both babies because of twins, and being up every 3 hours to feed them means I slept very little. That game was fucking phenomenal to be just up and playing, and then stop, feed, they sleep, you're not sleeping, play again, and then it was perfect timing for that game to come into my life. Streamlining helps when you can't invest your mental energy into developing your fucking character, especially when you're trying to develop your own fucking life. I don't give a shit about that much character. I don't want to sit there and be like, oh, well, your character's 16 years old now. Do you want to learn how to drive? No, just give me a fucking car and let me go. It's number 4, Skyrim.
Number 4. I was sip of this.
I'll be honest, like, I'm afraid, like, to this day, I'm still afraid to get into Skyrim. Only because knowing who I am as a gamer, I will stop being sociable, possibly quit my job to immerse myself in this world. Because
see, I don't think Skyrim is that bad though.
But see, I think that it will be that bad for me.
You need to do it. You need to
like I've resisted this long. Like
even like the game of the year edition or whatever, like it has all the apps or whatever, the DLCs,
which are
pretty cheap.
And they're fun.
Well, that's cheap considering how much you get.
I paid for the DLC the first go around, and this time around I just bought the enhanced edition. Even the stupid shit like the Hearthfire package of building a house, it's so fucking stupidly fun. You run around collecting shit, and you're not really building it like construction-wise like Fallout 4 ended up doing later on, where you're kind of building walls. But and I'm sure a million other games do it better. But it was fun to have your own house of that level where you can build trophy rooms, you can build not blacksmith, but like armories, things like that, alchemy areas. That's another thing too about the game. The alchemy is shit. Even though it's like super cool, you fucking can do nothing with it. And your character's not really specific to anything. Yes, you get some bonuses, but really your character can be anything. So that's another issue with the game. It's like you want to build a big badass, two-hand fucking wielding weapon character, but you don't start out with any inclination towards that or any inclination towards that. You're not like you're just not good.
You level up your skills basically, so you can
and you can level them all
be whatever.
Up, and it's just there's things wrong with it, but I think if you've got a good enough fucking imagination, which I think you should have when you're playing a video game, you shouldn't leave it all up to the fucking writers because that's your point of playing is putting yourself in the game. Then Skyrim is perfect for you. I don't agree with the whole thing of like people can mod the shit out of it because that to me just seems like a developer is half-assing a game, throwing it out, and then letting the fucking public make the game. That to me is horseshit, and that's also another reason why I think PC stuff is just not for me. Because I don't want to spend $1 million fucking dollars on a really nice gaming computer and then finish the fucking game for the developer that doesn't feel like doing it. I also hate day one patches. I mean, take your fucking time and give me a game that's good.
Yeah.
That's all I want. I don't have the time to sit there and fucking dick around, but I want the time to invest in your product, you know?
Well, sadly, that's the way games are going is the DLC packages and shit. It's just like, these are all the features we want to give you,
but... Like, even in Skyrim, the Dragonborn DLC and the Dawnguard DLC, they're fun side stories of shit that goes down. The Hearthfire package was fun and like really inexpensive, and it added different elements like the trees to grow your character. What are they called? Basically,
marijuana.
Just call them a tree. Yeah, the werewolf and vampire stuff. Like before, being either or was kind of shitty. Then the Hearthfire, I believe, is the one that came out. Dawnguard was the one with the storyline, but Hearthfire, I think, is the one that came out and developed the actual tree to become a werewolf. One of my favorite times playing was as a werewolf, and I maxed out all of my stuff. I went up and I clawed a giant and knocked him across the fucking screen. I was so powerful as a werewolf. I recorded it, actually. I had the recording for such a long time. But it was so fun, and I recommend it. There's a lot of shit to get over, but I mean, there's not a fucking, like I said, you can't please all the people. You're not going to nail every fucking aspect of the game. even the best games have blocky shit graphics or some fucking weird thing in the story.
Repetitive or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. They lose the translations because sometimes the Japanese game is the best, but the English game gets fucking watered down because of censorship.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Which I can touch on in a little bit. But yeah, absolutely. So Skyrim's number 4, and there's just so many reasons for it to be even higher, really, on a lot of people's lists.
Nice.
So play it, both of you.
To play it.
You
I have
play
played
more.
it.
I know you have.
Yeah, he's played it. I haven't.
We had our
Not a yeah. Yeah, one thing we like to do with it in Fallout 2, we'll make characters that are similar, but they can't play together ever.
I
So
know,
it's like
that's
hilarious. Like, yeah, we're gonna play fucking 2-handed orc guys, and
Yeah,
then
we were like brother orcs, and we were just gonna
we
share
made this
our
backstory,
stories.
but then it was fucking great.
We can make fun of anything, I guess, though.
Yeah, whatever. That was fun. And then we ended up making 2 girls in Fallout 4.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was mad at you because you had a female protagonist. I was like, I'm the only one that runs a female protagonist.
Yeah. That was great. And that was a total mistake, but anyway.
Mine was too. I
Because
didn't know to switch bodies. Like I thought it was
Exactly.
just you're all set with her. So
I thought you made both. Exactly. I thought you made both, and then like that's how they looked. Like, how am I supposed to know? What the
Right?
fuck?
Yeah, it wasn't very clear at the beginning.
These bastards. But I just went with it. I was like, whatever. It's my chick that's fucking owning people, sniping people from down the street. And
Hell yeah. I think I only ever played. Oh no, I had one male protagonist in Fallout 4. They were all female other than that, and they were so fun to play. Another streamlined as fuck. I mean, it was like a. I guess really Fallout 3 was probably like the game, and then Skyrim was just like a skin slapped over it, and then Fallout 4 was like a skin slapped over that. I don't know, whatever though. It's all good. Whatever you're into.
skin.
So
All right, so 4.
Yeah,
Number 3, 4.
4.
My number 4 is Command and Conquer Tiberian Sun.
You son of a bitch.
This is the
Yes.
first like RTS that I've probably played like generally, like maybe the first one ever or close to, but it's definitely the first one I played religiously. And it was one of the first games I played with my friends, so it was just like 4-on-4 battles against real people, like in maps that you could create your own maps with like map editors and all this stuff, and like it was just like, talk on, what was it, probably Ventrilo at that time or something, and you're just like, okay, all right, I'm gonna rush them right away, and you build up the army for later on attacking, and you make this cool fucking you just make this cool ass fucking like strategy or whatever, and it was just so much fucking fun, and it was fucking great.
What's the first game on my honorable mentions?
Nice.
Command and Conquer Tiberian Sun.
Great.
I honestly have never played it.
That game fucking
But
rules.
that's fucking
dude.
awesome.
You
Oh,
showed
that
me
game
the
fucking
game, and I
rules.
was like, holy shit.
Me and my
missed
buddy,
out.
dude, we
I
used to
missed
play
out.
that game. And he would play, and I would just kind of direct him. I was like his tactician or something. And we're building. It was so much fun. So much fun. Because you had to explore the map, too, to open it up.
Yeah, at
what
Fog
the
of
bases
War,
were and
so it
shit.
was fucking great.
It was unbelievable.
So that was part of the hurdle or something when you played against other people. You're like, oh, we have to get past their initial like defense so we can map where they're fucking. Because I was always Nod, so it was just like it was all underground shit. So I needed a map to where my underground shit could go. My strategy was I had a fucking cyborg commando with 4 cyborgs, and then I had 5 engineers and another underground fucking thing. And I'd go up in their base and start taking over buildings and building hands of Nod.
Oh, yes.
Like you could put things in queue, and before it ended, you could stop it. So I go over there, take over their whatever part of their base, throw down a hand of Nod, and just start throwing infantry out in their base, and just constantly be building like that. And they couldn't do anything about it. Basically, it was just like such a stupid strategy, but it was so fucking fun. So much fun.
I forgot what the fastest bike was. It wasn't a bike. It was a car. But it was like almost like a drag racer or some shit.
They had the buggies that were quick with the 4
might have been a
wheels,
buggy.
and then
That's
they did
probably
have the
what it
bikes too that were quick.
These were definitely buggies because they were the 4 wheels. They had like a rail design on them.
Yeah.
I remember I used to just I'd build about 3 or 4 of those, and I would just send them out because they were fast.
You could
I'd send
throw
them
them
out
in the
to
corner of the
explore all
maps.
the map.
and-
Yeah, they would just explore. I remember I sent one. It ripped right through from the entrance of a base, right out the fucking exit. completely unscathed, but explored the whole base. Then I could see all their shit blink, like, boop, they're building all this shit now because they're like, they know where we are.
Yeah.
But I already had, because I found out where their entrance and exit were, I had mammoth tanks escorted by like just a million fucking things coming down each side, so I sandwiched them in, did this
Oh,
whole
nice.
fucking, it was probably like it was such a great game, and to me that moment, like when you have a video game moment that stands out in your head, that's what solidifies the game in your mind as being just awesome because it meant something to you. And that in Command and Conquer Tiberium Sun was what fucking stood out to me, was that tactic, that real-time strategy, you know, like you said.
I used to play with one of my friends religiously. Like, it was always 2-on-2 we would do. And he would just, like, pump out infantry, like, early on and throw them at their base. So, like, already on the defensive. And I was the mid-game, like I was talking about, like, by the time I got I think it was, like, the Nod Command Center or something, to build the Cyborg Commando. So, like, he would initially attack them. They're like, oh, fuck, we survived, maybe.
Oh, so he's holding you off for the middle game.
Right, so then as soon as that comes out, all some middle game comes, and they're just fucked. Like, whoever we attacked is just, like, we didn't lose, like, basically.
So overwhelmed.
So, like, they were, you know,
So happy
either
to
down
the
or
top
nothing,
9.
or they would lose, or it was just fucking, I don't know. It was so much fucking fun. And like I said, that was one of the first games I played with one of my actual friends.
Hell yeah.
So it always gets that nostalgia with me. It was just fucking great. So that's why it's beaten most of these other games, because, again, it's, if you play with people
The
you know,
nostalgia
it's just
level's
fucking
strong
great.
on that one.
But it was cool too, because like I said, the map editor thing was awesome. So you could make crazy fucking levels with like how old the game was. Like you could put like all this like, you know, special Tiberium that you get crazy amount of money with. So you can just build like
Sending all the
fucking
harvesters
ridiculous.
and shit.
And you could build like there was things in the game too, like lava and shit. So you could like build like all these lava veins and stuff. And you run over those, and your fucking machines will blow up. And
I can't remember the name of the good guys.
GDI,
Oh, that's right. Yep.
Yeah.
It's GDI.
but
I
it
was
was
thinking
fucking
GI
cool.
Joe is GDI. It's so similar.
Pretty similar, yeah.
for sure.
But they had the Mammoth, and then the Nod had the Commando.
Yeah, because
Cyborg
we were
Commando.
using GDI. That was when I stormed the Nod base. Was when I used the buggies and shit that they had.
I just love the underground shit, so that's why I was always Nod. It's either those or the fucking Devil Tongues that they go through the ground and throw fire up there and just fucking like, it's like almost impossible to stop. But it was
Nod
just,
was too fucking cool.
It
It
was
was just too fucking cool.
the bad guys even like the single player shit, like they're going through the campaign, like the cutscenes and shit were actually
They
really
were
good.
Awesome. They
It
were
was like, oh,
awesome.
this is fucking cool. Like I really
That's
feel like
what
I'm
I
part of
played.
this.
I never played the online part, which is funny because honorable mention number 1 was Command and Conquer Tiberium Sun.
Nice.
It's on his top 9, and I never played the aspect he's talking about. So imagine
Nice.
like if this.
We gotta fucking play all these games. Bullshit. And that was Westwood Studios. I know you guys mentioned fucking studios and all this other shit. Now it's EA, and they butchered their game afterwards when they tried to come up with some Command and Conquers. But it happens. So yeah, that's my number 4.
Nice.
Fucking awesome.
Let's see. My number 4. Oh no, I'm sorry. Number 3. I already did 4. My number 3 is. Now, I love the Final Fantasy series, but only one game in particular really stands out from the series. And that's Final Fantasy 9.
9. Nice.
I know, like, 7 really kicked it off for me, but 9 was just more visually pleasing and story-wise. I loved it. I loved
Now,
the characters.
correct me if I'm wrong, but 7 was obviously like pretty blocky and all that shit like that,
Yes.
but it still looked good.
It did.
8 kind of had more of a realistic, like
Yes.
taller
Like,
characters
you
and
had-
everything.
Yeah, 8 had actual, like, full-length, like,
Yeah,
people, like,
because Squall and all
character
them,
designs.
I liked 8 a lot.
Yep.
But 9 kind of went back a little bit,
It's
like
like they
kind of an in-between.
Take those people, squish them down a little
Just
bit.
a little.
Just
right,
a little bit.
okay.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Not like you wouldn't classify them as
Sprites or
like sprites
full-grown.
or like in the anime community as chibis, which is like miniature versions of characters.
Okay.
No, they were kind of like an in between. So so yeah, you would take a character and pretty much squish it down just a bit, like 3/4 of a person, right?
9 was where I stopped playing, but I never finished 9.
Okay, I do recommend finishing 9. That's one of my favorites. Now, it was produced by SquareSoft. This was before they acquired Enix. Yep.
Before they became Squeenix.
Yep. This was back in 2000, and it was on the PlayStation 1. Now, what really sold me on the game was just how visually pleasing and beautiful it was, or it is. They, with the other Final Fantasy series, like you could see they went from like sword and sorcery, and then eventually continued going up, adding like machinery and whatnot. Where up to 8, it had a bit of a like tech was very very like heavy in that game. It had like a really nice like modern-esque cityscape, but with like good addition of like advanced technology. Whereas 9, they decided, okay, let's kind of go back to the sword and sorcery, but keep some of the tech. So you had like castles and kingdoms. They did have airships, but they looked like pirate ships. They had the wooden ships, but they were all powered and they had propellers and whatnot. It was great. Now I do like the cutesy design of the characters, the cartoony designs. But I always gravitate towards more like cartoonish looking like games and animation and whatnot. So visually it was great. The details in the characters' designs themselves and the world was amazing. It looked like I was moving through a painting all the way through. The characters themselves, each character had very strong characteristics. One of my favorite characters, which is also one of my favorite roles in the game, is a black mage named Vivi, which this is where great story writing came in, where you couldn't help but feel like extremely sad about this character, where he is just a living doll. He did not know that he was a living doll until a certain point in the game, and like early on in the game, like maybe disc 2 of the game, and it was a 4-disc game. And you feel for this little character because he's just like, he doesn't know who he is, doesn't know where he's come from, and then he finds out he's just nothing but a doll that's just like moved by magic, but he became more sentient. And when he discovers this, it kind of like cripples him a bit, and like all the characters around him are trying to like get him to like move his ass, like, come on, we gotta go. It's now become a survival thing. And then there is a great fight where one of the bigger dolls is trying to collect him, and then Vivi decides, you know what, fuck this, does like this massive black mage explosion and just like fucks him up, allows them to escape, and then comes back with like this vigor of just like, no, I control my life, this is my life, I'm done, I'm not a doll, like I'm a living person. And that, I'm not gonna lie, it brought me to tears because the animation was amazing. That was another thing. The animation in that game, fucking flawless. That with the great story writing, the emotional impact of the characters, like that brought me to tears. That scene made me cry, and I fucking love to admit that because it was so good. It was so well done. And that was only like the first third of the game.
Oh, jeez.
Dude, so then like the rest of the game, like it was impactful, but not as impactful as that. But I still enjoyed the ride all the way through. The characters were awesome, each one very distinct in their own ways. I love it. I love that SquareSoft decided to kind of tone it back with like the technology, do more of a sword and sorcery, added an element of like this weird olden technology type thing, but not really force it. With the living dolls thing, but it's essentially fueled by magic. It just a great story, great gameplay. Another RPG style game, and I feel it's one of the best in the Final Fantasy series. Great characters, just great gameplay, and will always be a favorite. Like I love Final Fantasy VII. It definitely kickstarted my love of the Final Fantasy series because I started there and then worked my way back and then forward. But Final Fantasy IX, that game really did it for me, and mainly because of that one character, Vivi, this little underdog who found his strength, found his voice, and just fucking kicked ass. He was always in my team, like every step of the way. He was always in my team.
Nice.
Yep. So that's my number 3. Yep.
Too many numbers.
All right. My number 3. Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
Woo, what a good choice.
For a few reasons. One, Link is probably my favorite video game character. I'm sorry, my favorite video game protagonist of all time. He's not my favorite video game character, but he's fucking awesome. Now, the thing with A Link to the Past is it's our age group. Like, we were lucky enough to kind of be born around that, like, Nintendo time, and then Nintendo took it and ran with it, and, like, everything else has kind of, like, been, you know, PlayStation and Xbox and all that other shit like that. Really, it's Nintendo that kicked it all off. Like, fuck Atari, fuck the Neo Geo, and, like, you know, whatever and whatnot. But the thing is the game was changed with Nintendo, because the reality of it is the honorable mentions list for anybody should really just be every fucking catalog of Nintendo games ever created.
Pretty
because
much.
they don't really do third party all that much. And it's Mario, Donkey Kong, Legend of Zelda. It's like all those fucking games are... they start it all, and you've got your shit here and there, like Sega came out with Sonic, and like I was never a Sega guy, but you can't deny Sega. I mean, Sonic is what he is. It's just these characters are phenomenal, and they create culture because it's some artist and writer's perspective on shit, and eventually, like 100 years from now, you look back and think that's something that is there. It's like timeless, I guess. The reason I like A Link to the Past is because I owned both Legend of Zelda and A Link to the Past. I'm sorry, not A Link to the Past. What the fuck is it called? Zelda 2: Adventures of Link. The gold disc, everything was great, and I couldn't really tell the difference. I was young. I couldn't really tell the difference between the two when I played them. I just know that Zelda was red and the Adventures of Link was blue. So, but I played them both. Couldn't tell what the fuck was what. I know there was differences and shit, and I don't think I ever finished either of them because I was, like I said, very young. And I was also playing that alongside Mario, which of course got more play than any game around. And I was also a big fan of Kid Icarus, which is honorable mentions. And I think a lot of people know Kid Icarus simply because of Smash Brothers, because of Pit. I didn't even know Pit was the fucking dude, and it was described to me, and I was like, oh my god, Kid Icarus. That was one of my favorite regular Nintendo games when I was a kid. That game was awesome. Plus, let alone like Duck Hunt, Track and Field. You know, like these fucking games, they're great. Gauntlet was probably one of my favorite games, though, on the regular Nintendo. Gauntlet was awesome. Speaking of like a D&D style type of thing, you know, the epitome of a dungeon crawl. But the thing with The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past is I believe it was actually written to be a prequel to the first two on regular Nintendo. So even though it's the third installment technically on Super Nintendo, it was a prequel to those. So you meet Link, and he wakes up from a telepathic call from Zelda. His uncle is like fucking strapped up, ready for battle. He says, "Don't follow me." You follow him anyway. You find him mortally wounded. He gives you his sword and shield and is like, fucking save Zelda. And then you go out and do your shit. And then as you get the Dark World, you got the descendants of the Seven Sages that have all trapped Ganon in this Dark World, which wasn't a Dark World before. It was just like a mirror world that Ganon took over and made the Dark World. And then you've got to fight an avatar of Ganon in the real world to then get access to the other world, save all the princesses that are all around because they're all descendants of the Seven Sages. But that game, I remember playing it and seeing all the knights, all the power you get with the magic. I can't remember what the hell they're called, but when you used to freeze people around them, you put your sword in the air and all the shit goes around, and you walk around with your sword out and you just poke people. Like, I mean, that game it was so fun that my top three, it's like you said, whichever one I'm playing at that moment, it is going to be my top favorite game. But Zelda would probably, if I had to sit down and not play a video game for years and then rattle off my top three, Zelda would probably hit. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past would probably be my number 3 out of it. Like, out of a solid list. Out of the 9 being kind of interchangeable depending on what mood I'm in, Legend of Zelda, no matter what, smokes the games I've mentioned prior. Because I'll pick fucking, if I had to save one of them from a fire, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past is coming with me. But, you know, it could easily have been number one on any given day as well.
Yeah.
It's that fucking awesome. And also, what's great about it, along with Donkey Kong Country, is that new Super Nintendo thing that came out. Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, Donkey Kong Country, Mario 3, and another game on my list are on that fucking
The
system.
the Super Nintendo
like
Classic.
the glorified emulator. Yeah,
Yep.
what the fuck you want to call that thing? Yes. So
Yeah.
I'll be owning
Yes.
that. But
Invite me
that
over.
game is great. Oh hell yeah, absolutely. So Legend of Zelda, number 3,
Nice.
Link to the Past.
Nice.
Which also, by the way,
Should've put that on my
Ocarina of
list.
Time. Ocarina of Time was supposedly like a spiritual, not sequel, but maybe
Predecessor?
successor. No, they were almost made like. Oh, I shouldn't say they. Ocarina of Time was almost made in homage of A Link to the Past. It was like, look what we can do now on this system, and they're kind of considered spiritually connected in a way.
Okay.
You know, not necessarily a sequel or whatnot, but it was just like. The game was so fucking good that another game that gets recommended, you know,
Right.
Ocarina of Time is up there, but it's A Link to the Past 2.0 basically.
Excellent.
Shut up.
A Link to the Past.
Link to the Past.
Faux Lizzle.
All right, my number 3 is Counter-Strike 1.6. That's the version, of course. It was actually a Half-Life mod that became more popular than the fucking actual game,
I was gonna say,
which is hilarious. This is a first-person shooter, as I'm sure if you're watching this, you probably know. It was a 5v5 game, basically terrorists. You could obviously be either one terrorist. You had to literally put bombs down, and counter-terrorists, you had to stop them or defuse the bomb if they got the bomb down. But this is one of the type of games that I played with at least 4 other of my friends. So we had a team of 5 people to play all the time, and we could what they called scrimmage against other fucking teams, and we actually went to actual LAN centers and did tournaments and stuff like that. Not only online, but actually went to like these malls when they had these LAN centers and stuff like that. So it was fucking obviously pretty big.
Hell yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of like how Overwatch is now. It's that big. It was that big at that time. They had tournaments, fucking across the world and all that shit. And there was teams across the world and all that shit. But what was nice about this, they had like public servers as well that you could go in there and sort of deathmatch it up and just rack up the kills and kill whole teams and shit, and still get like it wasn't as team based as Overwatch was, that you could actually go in there and just fucking destroy people and. Or just be like stupid, like me and some of my friends would go in there, like 2 or 3 of us, and just stack on top of all these boxes. People run around the corner and just get literally demolished by like 3 rifles or something. And it was just, late at night, drinking beers, whatever, just fucking laughing like, wow, this is happening. It's so much fucking like stupid fun. But it was just, I don't know, one of those games that played, who knows, countless hours and play with real people and that sort of thing, and it was fucking great. So that's my number 3.
Nice. Very nice. All right. So, my number 2.
Number 3.
No, number 2. Now, for my number 2, it's actually a series, because I could not pinpoint out of the series which one I liked the best. Because I love them all equally, and I love the progression of these games. It's the Mega Man series by Capcom.
Mega Man's number 2 for
It's
you?
number 2, yeah.
What
it's
the
number
fuck
2.
is number 1?
So
Holy shit.
the first
Unbelievable.
game released in 1987, and till present day with the recent release of Mega Man 11, it's crazy that this video game character is just as old as I am, pretty much. Born in 86, the Mega Man created in
Way more
87.
accomplished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has his own podcast.
I don't go out there and fight robot masters. Fuck
Oh,
that.
sounds like you're not doing much with your life.
Yeah, really not. In comparison, no, definitely not. The Mega Man series has been just a staple in my life, because like as pretty much the only main gamer like in my household, it was just a great one player game. Like this was all for me. Each installment had a great set of puzzles and like difficult levels that you would have to traverse in order to get to the robot master. And it was a real test of skill because only like 1 or 2 points as you traverse through each level do you have like somewhat of a save point. Other than that, it's pure skill to go from the start to the finish, to the start to the entrance of the boss, and then beat the boss's ass. So all the damage that you had taken and tried to salvage your life, once you get to that boss point, it's like, all right, dude, good luck, because this dude can easily like destroy you. And most often it did. But one of the save points, you were actually able to like regenerate back into the entrance of each boss stage and then try your luck with full health. Now, the character himself, Mega Man, I love him to death. It's weird because he's like a boy, but they call him a man. But it was just
That's what they say about you, right?
But his ability to copy every Robot Master's ability was amazing to me because it only helped you in the next boss fight. So depending on the order that you fight these Robot Masters. So part of it was choosing the first master to fight and then try to use that ability to beat the next one and the one after that. Oh shit, and the one after that.
First time sitting.
So, in the challenge of each level, it was just a big puzzle game to me. How do I get from this ladder to this ladder without taking damage? Or there's a series of spikes. I got to time my jump just right to make sure I can get over that pitfall that could lead to this series of spikes or whatever. It was always challenging to me. It always brought a challenge, and I love that. I love that about the games, the series as a whole, the character development, because with one, it was just jump and shoot. And as it progressed, you were able to charge a shot. Then you were able to slide, like, as the games progressed.
Yeah, they did a lot with that. That's probably the best part about it.
Dude, it was awesome, because it wasn't just the game progress, it was the character himself. You see, like, Mega Man progress as a character. And it was just awesome. And it wasn't always fighting with Wily, the main antagonist of the game, because they did introduce other characters too, who created their own versions of the Robot Masters. And each Robot Master had a theme. And I'm a sucker for, things with a theme. There was always like a fire type character, but they always changed up the name and the use of his ability or control of fire and things like that. So each element was done. There was like a gimmick character, I think it was Mega Man 4 or 5 that had Yamato Man, which is basically like a samurai-esque type of Robot Master. It like purely gimmick, but it was cool. In the design of the characters, they pretty much stayed the same until it got to the Super NES, where it got a little bit more flushed out, a little bit more detailed. And then now with the recent installment, Mega Man 11, it's a 3D model in a 2D setting. And they've enhanced the way Mega Man looks when he copies these abilities. He looks more like these Robot Masters because some of those features actually carry over. And it's amazing to me. And then not only that, there was like this future Mega Man, which they had the X series. So
I loved Mega Man X, man.
Yeah.
That was
That was for Super Nintendo, right?
yeah, Mega Man X.
That's what I played.
was my favorite.
Pretty hardcore.
Him
Yeah.
and Zero were fucking awesome.
It was great. They introduced an awesome character with Zero. They introduced new elements. It kept the same style of gameplay, but they also added a wall jumping ability on top
shit
of the
was
dash and the
sick.
charging.
Yeah, you have to just slide down and
Yeah.
then jump perfectly and
that
stuff.
simple element.
Yeah, I remember
gave
that. Game was fucking awesome.
Like you didn't have to rely on ladders and like elevators to actually traverse vertically. You could actually wall jump your way up, and it changed the gameplay entirely. And because it was a Super Nintendo, they added more details to that. It made him a little bit more cinematic as
I
well.
thought he looked cool too.
Dude,
Like that whole.
he was awesome.
Like he added like a whitish kind of armor to him every time you added something.
Absolutely.
He looked so badass.
And that
by
was
the end
another
of it
thing.
all.
It was you were able to upgrade the default armor. You didn't have to rely on a Robot Master. You upgraded the armor itself, to make all your copied abilities even stronger. Like, that shit was amazing. Like, I feel that they hit it out of the park with all the Mega Man and Mega Man X series, installments. They even did like Mega Man Legends, which was like a 3D version of Mega Man, but it had a whole different like backstory and whatnot. It was like a dungeon crawler.
Jeez.
Which was pretty cool. It had 2 installments of that. They were supposedly going to work on a third. I'm disappointed that they didn't, because I did play the 2 and they were awesome. They should have put out a third. People have been dying for a third installment.
When I was a kid, I used to take the hands out of my Lego guys, just one hand, so it would look like Mega Man's
like
blaster.
an actual Buster Cannon.
Yeah.
So awesome. Dude, and going back to Zero, even Zero had his own line of games too.
Oh, did he? See,
did.
I didn't play it after Mega Man X, so, and I liked Zero so much.
It was mainly for the Game Boy Advance.
Oh, there you go.
But it was such a good story.
awesome,
It was like, okay, so X and Zero take place in the future. The whole Zero storyline, way further in the future. But like, he was put in a deep sleep, just like Mega Man was, and then he came back, and then he was needed to kind of save the world. But there was still an element of X, where like X was supposedly a villain. So that kind of flipped the script a bit.
Oh, shit,
like, holy shit, now I gotta go take down my boy? Like, oh my god, that sucks. Turns out it was just a copy. Wasn't even the real X. But even still,
DMX.
but even still, the way that they advanced Zero as well, like, that was amazing. They kept a Mega Man style gameplay, added just a few elements.
All right, Dutch, your last. Well,
Number one
you
game
should say your one.
for
not
me.
the last one.
Similar reasons, actually, as to your Breath of Fire. But Final Fantasy III.
Nice.
And by Final Fantasy III, I mean Final Fantasy VI. Because when I played Final
It's just
Fantasy
3 and 3
III
together. That's it.
Right. When I played Final Fantasy III, it was called Final Fantasy III. Now it's called Final Fantasy VI. Because, for people who know Final Fantasy, numbers 2, 3, and 5 were not released outside of Japan. Numbers 1, 4, and 6 were. So in America, we got numbers 1, 4, and 6 as 1, 2, and 3.
Yep.
When they were actually 1, 4, and 6. So we didn't get 2, 3, and 5 until they were released.
Yeah,
Here.
once Final Fantasy actually gained steam in the West, yeah, that's when they were like, oh, okay, here you go, America.
Here's the rest.
Here's the in-betweens.
So, the thing is this was the RPG that introduced me to RPGs, and the thing is too is it's like my list. It kind of feels like a cop-out list because when I do it and like I'll read reviews and like I always kind of gush over any sort of like positive reviews on the things that I like because I'm like yeah. And Final Fantasy 3 gets or 6, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Final Fantasy 6 gets a fantastic reputation because of a bunch of reasons. But the thing is like a normal list for me, Final Fantasy 7 would have probably been included on it. But I feel like Final Fantasy 7 is awesome, only in the fact that it's a nice gateway to better RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's, because the thing is like if you play it again when you're older, necessarily like if you were young when it came out and you played it, it was fucking great. But when you play it again when you're older, all the characters are fucking whiny, ineffective little shits. Like all they do is bitch and moan and to be fair, Square and Squeenix and everything else that they do or whatever, it's like they really pat themselves on the back with these games. Like they think that they're just changing the whole fucking format of the gaming industry with their stuff, and like they're not the only ones. Like these are great games and they deserve their spots, and like any other person that's a naysayer is just typically like I didn't like it. I like this game better, and fuck you and your populist opinions. But the thing with Final Fantasy 3 is any game that gets you into a genre is worthy of anything because it opens you up to the better games or the games where certain elements can be taken. You can appreciate them because in actuality the majority of games are probably done so in the idea of changing something they didn't like about the game that they are technically referencing to in the first place. So like the first RPG, like Dungeons and Dragons will say, some game developer will say, I like these aspects, but how can I put that into a game? Then they do it, and then someone says, well, I didn't like that it wasn't like this. So then they'll take that and then run with it. And then that's just how you get games. It's the you can't please all the people all the time kind of thing, I guess. But the thing with Final Fantasy VI that got me is, like I said, it was my gateway into RPGs, and it's the RPG that I kind of weigh everything against to begin with. Maybe not necessarily as open as, like, say, a Dungeons and Dragons based game, because it's its own story and shit. But the thing with Final Fantasy is, for one, they've got 14 playable characters, which is the most characters any Final Fantasy's produced, and every character has its own backstory. And what I find interesting about it, which this might be some shit that, like, if you're a casual player, you wouldn't necessarily give a shit about, and I mean, it doesn't really change the game at all, but a bunch of different creators created different characters and their stories. Then it was up to one of the co-directors to basically put it all together and say, make this a fucking coherent story. So, like, one director created Locke, and one director created Terra, and then so on and so forth. A graphic creator created fucking Gao, and then one of the other ones, one of the other directors had to actually piece it all together to make it a coherent story from start to finish. My main reasoning, I think, for liking the game is the story is nice. I think the visuals are nice. Everything is great about it. And I mean, I would only have one Final Fantasy on the list because if you like, I don't know, maybe it's like AC/DC. If you like one song, you probably like them all. If you like Final Fantasy, you probably like them all. And for the most part, that's true for me as well. But I like 3 or 6. I like 7. I like 8 and 9. Then after those 4, I kind of don't give a shit. Or even before those 4, they're all just kind of whatever. So I like 6 because, to me, it did it best. And Kefka, my favorite video game character of all time, he lost a bit in the translation to English, but was still enough for me to be like, this guy's fucking great. He actually swears in Japanese in the Japanese version. He says things like, there's an instance where he's going to burn something down and someone pleads with him like, the person you're looking for is not here, and he says, then you can all burn to death. But in America it was like, well then, tough rocks or some shit like that. Like, it makes him sound cheesy. But in the Japanese version, he was a fucking psycho. And what's great is, like, he's just a true fucking nihilist that does not give a shit about life. And he becomes a god. He actually attains the godhood that he sets out to do. And the visuals of that, though, like the imagery and the soundtrack, too. Kefka's got, like, his own song that is fucking great. I think it's called Dancing Mad. It's fucking awesome. And the image of the pillar, basically, that becomes Kefka in all of his forms. It's just fantastic artwork. And then Kefka, like, this great insight into his mind, like when he's walking through the desert. He's walking through a desert, picture all the sand. And he stops to make a soldier dust the sand off his boots. It just shows you that this character is fucking unhinged. And not to mention the fact that Terra, the female protagonist of the whole story, while you can use any number of the 14 in any way, shape, or form, Terra's really, like, kind of the first major fucking protagonist. I mean, you got Metroid and Samus and all that, but, of course, Lara Croft came away later. But but the thing is Terra really was probably, as far as I fucking know, the first legit female protagonist. So, I mean, anybody that's into that shit, that actually pays attention enough to care, because why the fuck would anybody care? I mean, if it's a character and they're fun, then they're a character and they're fun. Who gives a shit what kind of genitals they've got? Terra was great. She was probably my favorite protagonist in that game. And if it wasn't for the fact that Kefka was in it, she would probably be my favorite Final Fantasy character of all time. Easily my top 3. But what's great about it, besides it can also be repetitive. The 14, not repetitive, but drawn the fuck out. The 14 characters, it's like all the story, and I can understand that. And it's great because, like, the earlier ones had, like, this medieval feel, like you were mentioning before. The earlier Final Fantasies, figure 1 through 5 in this regard, because we didn't see those first few of them. They had a medieval feel to them. The sword and sorcerer, like you were saying.
Yep.
Final Fantasy 3 or 6 rather had more of a steampunk aesthetic to it, with the gears and the Magitech stuff, exactly, which was cool too with the mech stuff and everything. But there was a lot of, like, 19th century vibe going on with it, between the art, the religion, and the culture, the industrial revolutions happening all throughout the whole story. And it was fun. Then you had, of course, you've got the military government that's just like very oppressive. And then you've got the revolutionary returners. And I mean, that's a story that's just, you can say shit's all done, but I mean, fucking human history is repeated over and over again, too. It doesn't just change the fucking names and slap different characters into it. It's the same shit. So anyone who bitches about video games in that regard is just fucking putting too much stake in the human imagination. But you've got Espers, where all the magic comes from in the first place, all that stuff. And the fact that it's just, I mean, all I need to say really is Kefka like 780 times to tell you to go play the fucking game, because especially if you like Final Fantasy VII, nothing holds a candle to Final Fantasy 3 as far as I'm concerned. 6, what the fuck you want to call it? 6.
Let's
Final
just stick
Fantasy
with 6. Yeah.
Right. The thing is in my head as a kid playing it, I remember the goddamn cover with the Mog or the Moogle, whatever the fuck they were called. I can't remember right off the top of my head. But he's holding like the flower and it says Final Fantasy 3. 3 eyes right in a row. So to me it's always Final Fantasy 3, but I know it's Final Fantasy 6, which is also on that fucking Super Nintendo re-release thingy that's going on. So Final Fantasy 6, 3, and Donkey Kong Country, but also A Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past are on that fucking thing. So that's like a must-buy, I think.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
But Final Fantasy 6, my number one game of all time. I mean, hold on. Let me clear my messages and show you. Because Kefka is the fucking screensaver on my phone.
Nice.
Right.
Excellent. Fucking excellent.
It's just, it has to be. He's the greatest fucking character. Unbelievable. Well written, I feel. It was one of the times where when Final Fantasy was kind of written predominantly by this one guy, he got promoted to like executive vice president of fucking Square and started delegating the stuff, so it was a little bit more hands in the pot, and it took a little bit of a different direction. And we might not have seen as much of a difference because we only had 2 versions prior to it, but being the 6th technical installment, there was a lot of changes.
Yeah.
But
changes in the right direction.
In the right direction, for sure, absolutely.
I didn't know about that, about the 14 character contributions.
Yeah, it's the most characters from any Final
insane.
Fantasy to date, and let alone the fact that every one of them had their own story that you play through. You play through their story to learn what they're about.
That's awesome. That's fucking awesome.
And that's my number 1. Kefka is my number 1.
Stop looking at me. My number 1 has to
Whoa.
be. You're really breaking my mistake. My number 1 has to be World of Warcraft. They just celebrated their fucking 14-year anniversary, whatever. And I've been playing, not religiously, but since the first genre, or the first year it came out. Actually, when it was released, I was fucking playing it on and off.
About it.
So for 14 years, with breaks in between and all that shit, I've been playing this fucking one game, with other games obviously, but
if it can last 14 years.
Exactly, it's like
that's a testament.
And obviously it's changed. They have been hit or misses as far as I'm concerned. With, they're on their 7th expansion now, which is fucking ridiculous. And MMO land, they're the level no one could ever
That's
get.
the measuring stick.
No one could ever, they try to replicate it. They try to change, do their own spin on it, but no one could fucking even touch. I mean, that's not necessarily that makes a game good to someone, but just in retrospect. So I guess my top 2 games are Blizzard games of all things, which is sort of, for whatever reason. But I mean, there's so many, real life friends playing through the fucking dungeons and raids and getting that accomplishment of downing this boss that's been fucking you over for literally months. And like I showed Bear lately, he didn't get to experience firsthand. Ragnaros, one of the first big raid. You're a little fucking guy, and Ragnaros is like this tall.
Yeah.
And you're literally just like, holy fuck, like, that was the first scale for me in a game. It was just like, holy shit, we need everyone that's in this raid. At the time it was 40 people, 39 other people, to fucking do this, and it was just like with lava around you and all this other bullshit. It was just like fucking nuts. So it was like it made it feel like fucking epic level, and things have only gotten better. There's tons of different fights and all that stuff, and
Keep a game fresh for 14 fucking years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, something really
I mean, they still have millions of subscribers, and I mean, obviously, it's not as popular as it was at one time, but I don't think the MMO fucking
they're paying
game
their bills
is
off of it. So
exactly.
they're doing
That's
enough.
It's not going to stop anytime soon,
Shut
for
up
sure.
there.
so. Yeah, that's my number one.
It's
Where
good reasoning. It's like the heavyweight champion of games.
I was going through this list, and I was like, okay, I played these games, I put them down. I haven't played them in probably years and years and years. Like it's mostly like we were talking about before. It's like WoW makes new cinematic on the new expansion, and all of a sudden I'm like, I gotta play this fucking game again. And then I play, and then it's just like I play for whatever amount of time. It's like their cinematic fucking group or whatever, just fucking second to none as far as I'm concerned.
Their cinematics are amazing. Like their cinematics team just every time it's like you see this like amazing scene happen, all of a sudden like these badass action, and you're just like, what happens next? Fuck, I gotta play the game. I gotta play the game.
Yeah. You're playing, I'm playing. Okay, let's go.
Yep.
So it's
Nice.
time in, fun, and it's a game that you can do a lot solo, obviously not everything, but it's fun for all ages. But now, like I said earlier, they made the game, I think 5 people you could do like sort of end game stuff as far as like gear level goes, or you can go up to as many people as you fucking want, basically.
Nice.
And they have all the, a whole bunch of different mounts and gear and shit, and so you can make yourself look like anything you want, essentially, and so there's a lot of customization and stuff like that. They've
definitely expanded on that quite a bit.
They have like 15 different races you can be now and all this other shit. It's fucking nuts.
So I'm about to start playing when I get home, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, just
I
get a
sold them.
subscription tonight.
Pretty solid fucking list of 9. For non-video game aficionados,
Yeah,
these are pretty good fucking lists.
Can't
I'm
complain.
motivated to
agree.
play all the games now.
We will be quitting our jobs and we'll be breaking
So
up
we're
with
gonna-
wives and girlfriends.
So we're going to be probably doing more top 9s in the future. Possibly
Yes.
movies next. Top 9 movies, because people like
Movies
to geek
could
out
be
over
it.
movies as well.
Yeah, which should be fun.
Are we gonna rattle off some of the honorable mentions? or-
I'm not even going to bother. This is going on so long now that
I think we mentioned most of them
we
throughout
kinda
this
mentioned
fucking
them in
cast.
passing. I think maybe we can do another, like a sequel to the top 9 games, like maybe a, I don't know, a bottom 9 games at some point
All right.
as a reason to.
Well, I just want to give a quick shout out.
Nope, that's
Yeah,
it.
no. I'm gonna give a shout out. Just 3 shout outs, okay? 1.
Is it us 3? It should be.
No. The Marvel vs. Capcom series. It's a great fighting series, although I wasn't too impressed with the last installment. But it was great. You had Marvel characters versus Capcom characters.
That's
The
the
best of
Capcom
both of
versus
your
Marvel.
worlds,
Pretty
going on.
much. So it was great. Like I could team up the Incredible Hulk
fanboy.
with Mega Man. It was awesome.
Oh yeah, nice.
But great series. They tried to change it up a little bit with each installment. Excellent. There was this one game I played on the PlayStation called Champions of Norath, and it could be it was essentially Gauntlet, but for the PlayStation, like Gauntlet or Gauntlet
That sounds
Legends.
familiar.
It was awesome. Like this was like very like one of the few games that I had to use the PlayStation multi-tap. This is for the PlayStation 1. So you can actually have 4 players on the screen, and you would be like a barbarian, a thief, or whatever, and you would traverse these worlds, kill everything, collect armors, and just like play together like Gauntlet Legend style.
Nice.
Like it was a super fun game. There was like this cool lizard race that I like to pick. It was just awesome. It was just super cool. So that was definitely for me gets an honorable mention. And then the very last game, it was a Super NES game, and I'm just curious to see if anybody else has played this. Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Dude.
Absolutely.
Fucking excellent game. excellent game. It was silly. It was wacky.
silly as fuck, but it was fun.
It was so much fun.
You could jump over the trampoline, so the fences right into the neighbor's yards and shit.
You had little obstacles, but you had ways over the obstacles. You had to save the town folk before they could turn into like zombies or demons or whatever. And it was just like a brother sister team pretty much. Like the boy had like a water gun, and like the girl had some kind of like, I don't know, I thought it was like a crossbow or something. I don't know. It's been ages since I played the game, but that shit was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and they had some crazy ass like creatures in the game. But damn, that game was just a lot of fun. So
Yeah, we'll have to do another cast and honorable mentions.
Yeah, I think we need to. Just the fact that
So I'm just writing down like 5 more while we're talking, so it's just like
maybe we should do topics next time, like RPGs.
like genres.
Maybe hit a genre.
but even
type
that,
of
it's just
thing.
gonna be like, oh yeah, by the way, yeah.
Right.
But
Then the video game topic will never end.
True. But
Pretty
it
much.
never should.
Exactly.
Video games for life.
there's gonna be new games that come out too. So
Right.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
all right, so unless you guys have anything else, I guess we can end it there.
Good.
No,
Alright.
I'm good.
Hopefully, chairs are safe in the future.
27
you.
games, not total. Since we mentioned Zelda together, play it twice.
That's right.
Make it happen.
So again, follow us on. We're on Google Play Music. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're on iTunes. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram, and we're on Podbean. Just look up Geekin' Out Network, and you can find us.
Yep.
For myself, Moose. We got Bear. We got Dutch. Geekin' Out.
Peace. I cannot like speak any much higher than what I am now of this, because there's just, I don't have enough words to talk about how amazing this game is, to me at least. Breath of Fire was great. It did have a series. There was a second, third, and fourth installment, but it did one of those things where like The Legend of Zelda, where it's a different point in time, changed the world
So not
Oh,
itself has
necessarily
changed.
like a sequel, just kind of like its own game, but in the same brand.
Exactly. But with each installment, and I played the second one, never beat it, never played the third and the fourth. They were gonna do a fifth, but they were gonna actually make the fifth an MMO.
Oh, wow.
But they never went full force with it. But that first one, forever and always, will be my top one. That will be my top game ever.
Nice.
I love that game so much. Great character design, great artwork, but just a story.